G'day guys, welcome back to the channel. So yesterday came into work, did a video and it was absolutely terrible. So yeah, gonna delete that footage. I will show you what I achieved yesterday, which took a considerable amount of time to get absolutely nothing done, but fixed the fuel gauge in the BA. So I'll show you what I did. I think I've got some footage that'll work for putting that clip in now. Alrighty guys, got to the bottom of it. She's rock solid now. You wanna know what I did? All I did, I think I messed this up from the start. I think this is all my fault. I had spliced in line the fuel sender wire. So it must have been getting 2 pull-ups from the factory cluster or something, and then from the Haltech, and it was jumping around. I just thought, let's just snip it and see. Gave it a snip and it went rock solid 0.84, which is probably where the tank is. So yeah, if you are wiring in a BA fuel sender, snip the fuel sender wire. Alrighty, so have put some dual wall heat shrink on the end of that pin, that wire, and then just this connection which goes to the dash now. Just got some heat shrink over that. Now that's out of the way, let's put yesterday behind us, along with last week behind us. Let's do the battery relocation today. Let's just get it done. So car is already in the workshop, just gonna chuck it up on the hoist, pull the battery out, get the mount ready. I'll show you the mount I bought. Start running cables, gonna run the battery in the boot. Gonna run 2 BNS cable from the battery to the starter motor, and then I'm not sure if I'm gonna tee off the starter motor to the fuse box or whether I'm gonna go another one from the battery all the way to the fuse box. But either way, we'll figure that out when we get there. I'll see what the terminal and starter looks like. If it's big enough to fit the 2 cables, I might just go daisy chain it. Otherwise, happy to just go straight from the battery, another full run. So got plenty of cable. So anyway, let's get stuck in and get some stuff done without getting distracted today. Oh, completely forgot to say, got Evilhawk back on the channel. Been missing for a little bit, but got him back on the channel today, holding the camera for me. Thanks, bud. Doing bloody beautiful. Alrighty, so got everything I should need. Got some conduit to go over the cables that run under the car. Got some black 2 BNS, got some red 2 BNS. Trumpers, heat gun, crimpers, drill, step bits, heat shrink to do over the terminals and stuff, just to make it a little bit neater. Now this is my mount I'm going to be using. I got this through Mob in Melbourne, basically the bolts to the floor, Optima battery bolts to it, and then these brackets will clamp the battery down. Should look pretty nice. Obviously some people hate the look of a battery, I just hate the look of those plastic battery boxes, so that's what I'm going to go with. Obviously the battery is bright and yellow, but it's in the boot, so who cares. Comes with a bit of hardware, may end up having to put longer bolts in to go through the floor or something. Haven't decided how I'm going to mount it to the floor. Preferably I would drill through and then put maybe like a plate or something on the underside of the car, just to keep it extra secure, but we'll see what we can do. All right guys, I'll do you a deal. I won't get distracted doing this battery, but we'll make a list of everything that I want to do along the way and we'll do it after.
You sure about that? You sure about that?
Because otherwise this battery will never get done, because I'll just keep getting distracted. So let's get this battery out of here. Let's start with that. As soon as I pull this battery out, I'm going to find 10 things I want to change, but I'm just going to talk about them and not do them, because otherwise we'll make absolutely no progress. First thing, I already hate these terminals, but they're going, so that was already happening. Alright, no turning back now. These little earths on here are really shit. I think I'm going to go battery to starter motor and battery to fuse box on its own. And I think I'll leave all the alternator circuit for now, because it's working fine, so no need to go fixing what ain't broken. And then that can be another project later. We can look at doing that, because once I was under the alternator, there's a little bit going on there where someone's not used the correct plug and there's just like random pins and stuff. So that will definitely cause me to want to mess with it today, but we're not going to. All right, battery out. That is really annoying without handles. All right, that's just as bad as I was expecting. All right, crap going everywhere, but guess what? We're staying on task. All we're here to delete earth cable and this this battery cable for now. We'll deal with everything else later.
You sure about that? You sure about that?
Jesus, that was a little dramatic. It's the alternator, charge plug, and power steering switch wires. That out of the way. That's my dump valve power wire. You gotta remember to put that back on. This will be my trans fan. It's gotta go back. That'll be the fuel pumps. That is gone. This now goes down to the, I don't know what that is, part of the battery or something. All right, let's probably just put all this, let's leave all this off for now. Now, I don't know who did that, but that's absolute crap. So I will probably change those today. I might even end up going through the ECU like I've said up a million times, but anyway, at some point those relays are getting deleted with the PDM, but anyway, I still can make them neater for now, which is totally fine. Now I'm not sure why I've got 2 wires for that earth for the fan, but I might just put a bigger wire on that. Deal with that later. Stay on task, Bentley. Right, I might pull this fuse box up and just see what this negative terminal looks like. I might just replace the whole thing. I'll do that off camera because my camera's in the way. But for anyone wanting to know how to do it, see that little clip there? There's a bunch of them. There's like one there, a few others. Once you take off this, and that fuse box lifts up and then exposes all the wires underneath it. So it's not going to be a full-on how-to, but if anyone's looking how to do it, that's how you do it. Alright, now it is an absolute casserole of mess under there, which amateurs I would highly recommend not touching. But anyway, might just move some of these relays out of the way. Alright, well that earth seems to just go through here and then down here somewhere. Oh yeah, it just goes down to the chassis here. Right, so that's the big earth wire. Goes out the bottom. Right there. My earth from the block to the chassis is actually really gross. They're like the meshy sort of one. Okay, so yeah, that earth looks gross, so I'll just be making a new earth for that. And then obviously that's where that earth comes down, so I'll just buzz that down from down here. It's a bit easier. I can't see what I'm doing because the camera's in the way. Alright, now that's unbolted, that should just come up. See, it is. Alright, earth gone. Try and start neatening some of these tape and stuff going everywhere. Going to cut this tape, take it off on both sides. Not really sure what that was there for, whether that was OEM or whether that was done by someone. Alright, that can probably come back together, put everything back in the box. Now obviously, I think that's fuel pump relay, so someone will have triggered or maybe that's a constant power for the fan, but these negatives will end up going to like an injector output or something, auxiliary injector output from the ECU. Like how I said, no getting distracted while doing the battery relay, but this is somewhat needed. Just see how badly this has been installed. Gross. And this is the fan, also gross. That should just be the constant power for the fan. So I'm gonna probably delete both of those for now and come up with a better solution. going to delete the fan as well, just to make life easier. I'll probably end up teeing back in, maybe even back to that same wire for the constant power for the fan, but I'll be crimping it, not soldering it. So let's just put everything back in the hole for now, sort of figure out what's going on. So, all right, fuel pump fan relays, they're kind of tucked away for now, out of the way. Forget about them for now, deal with them later. Just go under the bonnet cable. They can just sit there for now, completely out of my way. That's my dump valve wire, that can sit there for now. Now, my fan wiring is a little bit more complicated because it's got some temp sensor on it, which doesn't really seem to do much because it just always seems to be on. So I'm gonna see how that's wired and figure out why it's either always on if it has a temp sensor, or just run it through another Haltech output, and it can be temperature based for the transmission temp. So it's not always on as soon as you put the ignition on, which I hate when fans are like that. Obviously when I do the PDM, I can have all the fans ramp up over time rather than just instantly on when they get to a temperature. Now, we've got what I assume is switched power, 2 big earths, and constant power. And they both go down here. So this one is power to the fan, but the other one is power to the switch. So I'm just gonna figure that out first off camera, and then I'll tell you how it goes. So this pin here is 30, comes from the battery. This pin here is 87, goes to the fan. So that obviously sends power to the fan, but the way they're triggering it is they've got pin 85, goes to like ignition power or something, switch power, and then pin 86 was going to the one side of that temp switch, and the temp switch was then earthing with the motor. So I don't really know what their goal was there, because as soon as you turn on the key, the fan comes on. So I'm just gonna ditch nearly all of that. I'm gonna run my own pin for the earth for the fan, and then I'm gonna run my own earth to the relay from my ECU, and then I'm gonna run, this will go back to switched power as the input for the triggering side, and then obviously my constant power will just go back to the positive terminal on the fuse box, and then this will just be redone. Because from what I'm going to assume is someone's crimped into that and put some pretty small earth wire there. That looks smaller than that, so I'm going to probably reconnect here wherever they've joined in and make that bigger, because bigger is always better. Unless I have pins for this. If I have pins for this, I might just replace the pin, the whole wire, everything. Right, either way, that relay's been yeeted. I'll probably end up just replacing the whole thing because it's actually really gross. So now this is looking much neater. Now that's meant to be taped to that. I will tape that back up at the end. So for now, I'll probably run a wire out of here. I'll run one wire from that fuel pump trigger, and then one wire from whatever that other key on trigger was for the switched power for the fans. Obviously a bit neater than however it was, and yeah, we'll make that much neater. And then once that's all got those two wires run out, we'll tape all this up neater and put it all back together properly. Alright, so just gonna snip out all this soldered shit and crimp it all back together. It's obviously a lot easier to pull those wires out of the relay holders. Probably not going to show you every step of how to do that. If you can't work that out, probably shouldn't be doing what I'm doing. It may just very well be the issue with my fuel pumps with pressure. A bit hard to show you, but those terminals are a little bit green. And the fuses aren't great. They kind of just pull out and they're a little bit crusty. Probably a shitty connection. So So I'm going to go ahead and replace those relays as well. And I'm going to go away from these pins, plugs. So going to, yeah, obviously go away from all that and do my own wiring for that. Obviously using the pre-existing wires, but new connectors on all of that, and see if we can make that any better. Right, I said I wouldn't get distracted, definitely getting distracted. MIDI fuse holders, because they're way better than the inline. Some new relays, some new connectors. Let's get this all buttoned up really quick and get back on task. Both of the fuel pump positive triggers are wired to the pink wire. There's just a butt connector. Add my 2 crimps into that, so that's just replaced that solder joint that was really gross. So it's got a dual wall heat shrink on it, so that's glued itself to that connector and everything all good. So that'll go back into the housing, and then just going to do the 12 volt switched one as well. It was a little short, so it's going to be a little tricky, but I didn't have the exact connector that I needed, so I'll just be using a little blue one. I'll be cutting the heat shrink thing down a little bit, but I'll be adding the trigger for the fan relay to that one, just as a 12 volt switched rather than the fuel pump module. So that's this end of that sorted. That's obviously glued itself to that connector. It's crimped, it's ready to go. Just add that to that end of that wire and add my trigger wire to it. Alright, they can now go back into the fuse holder because they're ready to go. Alright, they're all back in, everything's sweet. Just started running some netting over that, whatever it is, bloody braid sleeve, just to sort of make it a little bit less obvious once it comes out of this fuse box holder, and puts back together. Alrighty, making forward progress. Fuse box back together, alternated charge wire back on, plug back in. Now that's all taped up, secured, all the harness, and there's my 3 triggers, 2 fuel pumps, 1 fan. That's my positive power for my dump valve. That'll be going up here. I've tucked it under the fuse box because I had that fully unbolted instead of running around it. They'll be going to my relays. So yeah, it's getting a little bit neater, and all this is getting deleted. It's starting to build out the relays. So we've got, obviously our triggers come from here. We've got 3 relays, 3 triggers, pink, pink, red. Then we've got our constant power through, we're using MIDI fuses for the fuel pumps, 30 amps, and then we just reused that fuse holder for the fan, the original fan one. So they go to that post there. They're all pre-terminated. Now, these are my 2 fuel pump power wires. So they go on my, I think the 87, whatever output pin is. Yep, 87. Then we just need to hook this pin, and this pin to outputs from the ECU. And then we just need to make that pin, not that one. Then we need to go from here to the fan, earth the other side of the fan, and then put our output triggers from the ECU to the earths of all these relays, and then we've got all of those 3 relays as outputs from the ECU. Alrighty, fan has now got its own DT plug. It's just going to get zip tied behind here, so it's out of the way of the wheel, and then that's routed up into the engine bay, up near the battery holder, so that will get earthed and power from up there. So I love laminating these little sheets just for reference and stuff, so you can you don't scratch them up and ruin them. So anyway, I've got my 3 outputs, my DPOs. They're going to get wired to the aux pin. Now we're going to use the injector DPOs. So we're looking at where are we here? So second row, we're going to start probably just left to right, pin 10, 11, 12. What I'm also going to do while I'm here, just to save me having to get back into it later, I'm going to wire another DPO, maybe 2 more DPOs, and run a DPI as well, so I can run my trans brake. So I will end up doing it through the ECU, not through the PDM or through the dash or anything, just to make sure that there's no delay. So for now, it'll just be regular relays, running my trans brake. When I do get more competitive racing, I will probably upgrade that relay to a solid state so I can creep and do all that sort of stuff. But for now, it's just going to run some wires so that I can hook that up. I'll just run that into the cabin for now and hook those up later. Maybe tomorrow, maybe another weekend anyway. So yeah, let's just get these 3 done, and then my extras that I'm going to run, and then we'll figure out what we need to put all the engine bay back together, and then basically all that is left for this weekend is get the actual battery mounted and run the 2 battery cable runs. Pulled my my ECU DPOs back off the way they were routed, put the braid sleeve on them. Just going to tighten up this heat shrink and run that back over again. Alright, ECU's right out of the way so we can get to this connector really good. I've got some stuff going into it there. I've got obviously wideband going down there, and I've got the CAN wires going in there. Anyway, here's my 2 fuel pumps and thermofan for the trans, and then I've also got, these are going to be for trans brake, so I'm going to connect them in and just route that through that grommet, and they can just sit in the car for now, and I'll hook them up next time. Alright, so it goes thermofan, DPO 1, then fuel pump 1, fuel pump 2, and then it'll be the output for the trans brake. Right, future Bentley, trans brake output, DPO 4. Orange wire is trans brake output, future Bentley. Alright, and then black is DPI 4, and white is DPI 3, I believe. If that's, so they're next to 5 volt ground. 5 volt ground, sorry, 5 volt supply. So 1 to 4, I think orange, yeah, orange grey is 4, and orange brown is 3. So DPI 3 and 4 is, white is 3, black is 4, and orange is DPO 4. It looks like it's tight, but it's really not. It's really not that tight, and it bends this way anyway. So yeah, my wires, all my new wires and my existing AVIs are all zipped together. Start plugging everything back in. All's left, just got to run that cable. Everything's sort of tucked up good other than that. So let's just slip that out of the way. Everything just sort of runs neatly down here. I don't love that, but probably should have gone the other side of all that. But anyway, just runs across the front, pops out here. Everything's tucked pretty nicely here. Obviously when I have an intake, that'll come over here and cover pretty much all of this. So you won't really see any of that once I change the cooler and all that sort of stuff. But anyway, at least now on the dyno I can test a proper intake versus the turbo guard, which is something I wanted to do for ages. My earth for the fan I'll put to this factory earth point. So what I'm going to do is, I've got this bad boy. I'm going to buzz that around that earth point and clean off some of the paint. Alrighty, much better and nice and neat and doesn't make a huge mess. One more quick thing I needed to do. I won't get distracted doing this battery. Was drill a hole for that to pull that away from this rod, so as it comes up now it's going to be in line with this, it's never going to contact, so I'll have to obviously recalibrate all my voltages, but yeah, it will work totally fine. Alright, so that's now in line with that other rod. That should never touch. Everything's all sweet. See how we go. Gonna head off. Righto guys, that's it for today. So come back tomorrow and put the battery in the boot. Exactly what I said I was gonna do today. Cannot get distracted tomorrow though, because it's Monday and back to work Tuesday. So literally just mount the battery, run the cables, turn it all on, and we're done. So hopefully I can stay on task tomorrow and not get distracted, but at least we punched out some awesome work today. Righto guys, back again for day, I don't even know. Today we are putting the damn battery in the boot, running the battery cables, running the earths. Then we're gonna set up some of the laptop-y stuff and gonna get stuck into that. So I'm enough yapping, because I yapped way too much. let's just rip into it. So I'm fairly indecisive with where I want to put it. Definitely like the idea of keeping the jack tools and stuff in the car, so I don't really want to put the mount here because it does take up a little bit more room than that. So if I was to mount it here, like it would hang over that ledge quite a bit and look a little bit weird. Would also make it really hard to get to those jack tools. So I was thinking this side, so at least it's a lot flatter here. So if we went something like putting it somewhere like that, so it's on those raised ridges, can cut the carpet around the battery. I'll go up on the hoist and see if I can get access under there, because I'd like to put straps under the clamp as well, just to give it a little bit more rigidity, just in case I'm in an accident or rollover or something, so it doesn't catch fire. All right, so what I sort of wasn't factoring in was that would basically, I believe those ridges are either side of this chassis rail. So I suppose I could probably do it there. It is kind of double skinned. I suppose the only real way to find out is drill holes and find out where they sort of end up exactly. But yeah, that's definitely one option. I just don't like when you end up with, you know, a hole sort of half drilled through two panels. But let's see what happens. Maybe we'll just drill some holes and see where they come out. At least I've got some good earth points here. I can buzz those earth points and earth the battery to there. You know, cut a grommet here. Can probably then try and run the cable this way, up above the thing, around the fuel tank there maybe. Might be able to just get through there. All right, so I'm gonna commit to drilling that mount here. Going to probably hole saw the cables out the big area here, like right there somewhere. Positive cable will run forward, come along here, go up where those fuel lines are, end up in that channel right there, drop down from there, down here into this, run along this, and it should pop out here. That should, there's another cover that normally goes here, up to about here, covers all that. Then I'll run it along the floor up here and to the starter. And then I think it may just be easy to go from the starter to the fuse box rather than routing a second one. I'll see if I can run two, but that is a lot of cable for no real reason. So it might just go from the starter to the fuse box. All right, 5 minutes into the job, already just about lost a finger, off to a good start. All right, so that mount sits nice and flat there. I've got that seam sealer cut away a bit. So I'll go get the battery and just make sure that will work. If I sit it there and stuff, I can get to the terminals and everything okay. All right, that fits fine. I can get to all the terminals real easy, super easy. Can get to all the stuff I need to. Be able to run the cables down and out through there. So it'll be nice and neat. Let's drill some holes and mount it. All right, so the only real problem I'm running into is just the alignment of these bolts to the spot welds. So if you look, it's hard to tell, but basically the two bolt holes are narrower than the spot welds. So I am hoping you can actually see on the bottom, you'll be able to put a nut or something, because otherwise I'll have to go with a riv nut, and I just don't really trust those 4 riv nuts to hold a battery in like a bad accident or something. But I suppose if I'm in an accident bad enough where they'll fall out, like, we're bloody moving, and the car is an absolute write-off anyway. So all right, so just going to mark those holes and start drilling and see where we end up. All right, so just going to mark it and then measure it and then square it up. Start with one hole and see what it looks like from underneath. right, let's go up and see what that looks like. Yeah, so that's sort of what I was worried about. It's ended up being quite close to the radius of that. So it's that's going to actually be pretty hard to put a washer and a nut, but we actually might be all right depending on how big we need to go. So just going to go ahead and drill the rest of them and see where we end up. Hopefully we just luck out, but we'll find out. All right, so my next problem anyway is that I don't have rib nuts in the right thread. These are the bolts. This is the only thread I have rib nuts for. So obviously these are a coarser thread, they're like 1.5 or something. We only have 1.25. And then we don't have any 1.25 countersunk bolts. So I'm just gonna go with this size hole first. Try and use bolt and nut that came with it. That bolt goes through there, totally fine. But obviously the rib nuts are a bigger hole, so if I do find that this is just not working, or it's just not strong enough, whatever, I can make the holes bigger, put the rib nuts in, and go and get some countersunk 1.25 bolts, or find some 1.5 rib nuts. All right, all the bolts are in. Let's go up, see where they ended up. This one definitely got really close to that metal skin, so I did a bigger hole just to see if we can offset it a little bit. All right, so this side we turned out pretty damn good. Be able to get nuts on that, no problem. This one will be a little tricky at the front. Back one's pretty good. So I've taped the top of those bolts so I can try and put some nuts on from underneath and rattle them up and see what happens and see if they pull down. Otherwise I'll have to probably rattle them from the top and hope the nuts pull up. Well, I do have a smooth brain after all, but they're all tight now because I didn't record tightening them, but oh well, they're all tight, so bloody beautiful. So let's start routing cable. Alrighty, she is all bolted down and that ain't going anywhere, boys. That ain't going anywhere. So just gonna give the carpet a quick cut and see how that works. Alrighty, with a little bit of a trim, obviously just missed the mark a little bit there, but got it pretty spot on. Pretty happy with that, looks good. Just nice and clean, doesn't stand out too bad. Alright, just got some terminals loosely on, run the cables backwards, and I'll pull that carpet up again, drill some holes in the floor, run the cables through the floor. Alright, so I actually don't have a lug big enough for this bolt. We've only got 35-8s, so I've just ordered some 35-10s. So probably for now I will focus on something else, just routing cables and stuff, and crimp the ends on them at the end. So start routing this cable. Alright, so using these type of crimpers on these lugs with a 35 die in them, then that's your final result. Crimped on perfect and some heat shrink. So gonna just start making some ends that I can, because I've only got the 8mm lugs, so this can go starter motor to fuse box. I have also just ordered some right angle lugs, so that'll fit the fuse box better. When I ordered my 10mm straights as well. So we had to go from the starter motor forward to the fuse box, and then from the starter motor back to the back of the car for now, and then crimp the battery terminal end and crimp the fuse box end at the end. I'll also be routing just some conduit over the wires just to give them that little bit more abrasion resistance so they don't rub through on anything, and a little bit more heat protection, stuff like that. So I'll be going roughly following the way the factory wire went, going down there, and hopefully we don't run into too many snags. Alright, so wire comes down, just got a little bit of slack there, runs across there, runs up where the transcooler lines go, comes across here, comes down, runs under the engine on the rack. Now it just pops out here for now, it's nice and long, I can pull it all back through. But I was just about to pull the starter solenoid wire off, and I gave it a little tug and it just popped out of the terminal. So I'm just going to crimp a new connector on that too. So lucky that didn't break down on me on the side of the road anyway. Alrighty, so I took the end off that wire, stripped a fresh little piece off, just going to crimp a new little terminal on it, and then we're good to go. I'll leave it off till I get those wires onto the starter solenoid, and just so it's out of my way so I don't accidentally bump it or anything. Alright, positive wire connected just for now, loosely, runs under the engine, up over here, up there. I'll pull a little bit more slack out just to preempt how much it's going to need, and then put a crimp up the top, Right, so I've given that a little bit of a pull. If I drop her right there, then we'll be pretty laughing. All right, that's all ready to go. That can just sit there till I get my new lugs. Let's run the cable from the boot to the starter. All right, so my plan is to run the cables sort of straight down, so they look fairly uniform. So I've sort of marked roughly where the terminals will end up. Now, it probably makes more sense if I mounted this battery the other way. It just looks a little bit grosser. I like having the Optima logo at the front. So we'll probably go with how it is, because my earth wants to run backwards once I go through the floor, and my positive wants to run forwards. So it is unfortunately a little bit backwards, but oh well, I'm not buying a new battery just to flip them. So I will just use a step drill, just go to that 20 mil, and then probably put some spiral tube in the holes just to shield them, or maybe I'll see if I've got grommets or something that fit. But anyway, I'll just sort of smack them through and see what happens. All right, 2 20 mil holes. Let's see what we can use to protect them. Okay, so I didn't have any grommets, but I've got some of this small stuff, so you can actually run that kind of reversed around the hole. So I'll put it on and then I'll show you. I think it might even be too big for what I need to use, but I'll do a test and see if it works. All right, so effectively you do that. I just got my length a little bit wrong, and then this conduit that's going to be on my cable still goes through, and then that's going to be really protected. It's not going to rub through at all. So that one's perfect. I've got that length right. I'll just replace this one with one that's just a little bit longer, and then we're all good. Alrighty, so obviously going to earth to that tow bar point, so just going to run my little whizzy. That does a nice ring there, but I think I might just hit it with a flap disc as well, just to give it a little bit more. All right, now we can be sure we've got a really good earth point and won't have any issues, hopefully. All right, I've got some positive cable coming out. That's all covered in conduit. Let's start feeding it up. All right, this is gonna be painful, but gotta start somewhere. First little bit run. Righty, comes down. So it goes up here, around there, over those control arms, down the front of the tank, into there, comes out here. Alrighty, it's gonna come through here. Just gonna kinda, might zip tie it to the fuel filter just for now. I will P-clip it at the end, but this will just be to hold it roughly in place. Right, so it's too long, so I'll need to start routing it back through, but I'll put a terminal on it first and connect it to the starter motor first before we run it back. So let's get a terminal on this. Just gonna go wash my hands first so I can keep it nice and clean. All right, got the end all crimped on, heat shrunk, and I've got the original starter terminal. I'm just gonna put this on one of the wires, and it should be able to pop over both cables coming off it. Alrighty, she's all tightened up. It's not ideal. I'd probably say, if anything, I'd prefer to have a longer bolt on the starter, but it's tight and it's gonna hold on, and we'll see what happens. Alright, so it tucks in behind the pumps, one P-clip there, then zip tied to the fuel lines because it's secure enough. One more P-clip under here. Then pulled it up tight, pulled all the slack to the back. Just going to refit that little fuel line protector. And once it comes out here, zip ties up to the fuel line. Then it's pretty much ready to just get all the slack pulled out of it and crimped the terminal on it once it's in the boot. All right, officially waiting for Repco to deliver some parts. Positive wire goes up and in. Earth still waiting on a lug, so I can mount it here. Up front, still waiting on a 10 size lug to run this earth from here to the engine mount to replace that crusty old wiry style one. So waiting on that, and then waiting on a 90-degree lug to connect the fuse box power, and then we are ready to test. Hell yeah. All right, Repco just dropped off these. So the angle's just not quite perfect, but it does fit. Just needs to be straightened a little bit. So I'll just put a little bit of preload on it. A little bit easier to do that than to try and do that nearly 90 degrees because they'll snap. So I'll just give that a tiniest little bit of a straighten and see if that fits any better. All right, so that's just got the tiniest little kick up on it now. And that is perfect. It sits home, so then I'll be able to add all my extra earths on top of it, extra power on top of it. So let's crimp it. Righty, that's all crimped on and all done. So fuse box lid on, add my earth, and then terminate my earth at the back and my positive cable to the battery, and then we are pretty much done. And with the lid on, that's sort of how that looks. Everything's somewhat tucked away. It's not the neatest, but by the time I have an intake airbox sitting over that, you probably won't really notice any of it. All right, earth done. Put some conduit on it later. I'm just really running out of time, so we've really got to get a hustle on. All done. Now let's do this earth, and then one more positive connection and we're done. All right, earth cable, run. Bloody beautiful. All right, all ready to connect the negative terminal. She's built, she's ready to connect, and let's, you know what's about to happen, Kester. All right, now I have built a file last night with a lot of differences. Obviously I have then made my changes to my fuel pump stuff. So fuel pumps are now different. I've got all the pumps allocated. Obviously that's different. Thermofan 3 is also now allocated as a output from the ECU, so that should all work. Transmission, I changed from, I used to be set up as, on here it was gear position sensor, which is actually for like a sequential. So I have this now set up as selector position with use selector position. So I'm gonna have to recalibrate all of my voltages because I didn't have park on my old one, because obviously the sequentials don't have park. I could never really work that out. But anyway, so I got first, second and third, which I'll have to calibrate. Park, reverse, all that stuff, because this now does go into all gears, so we'll need to do that. And I've also set up the trans brake. I haven't actually wired those relays yet, so I haven't made this switch go through the ECU or the output relay down here. I just haven't had time, but I've made it so that I can trans brake with pulling cruise or with pushing that, so I can do either. So that's awesome. I'll flash this in and see if everything works. Trans positions all working. I've calibrated all those. Fuel pumps, let's just test those. Let's just go, if I did this right, I should have fuel pump 1 should be prime. So that's in tank. We're just getting 22 PSI. And if I hit it once more, it should go to, it should add all of the peer bags. Okay, peer bags don't work. Weird. Interesting to note, with only one peer bag running, my fuel pressure is only 48 PSI now. When I add the second one, prime, it goes up to 52. So that might have something to do with the fact of how it's not returning. I may actually need to still drill the return swirl pot. All I did was put a stock one in, but maybe I do need to actually drill the stock one, and that might actually end up solving the rest of my fuel pressure issues. Alrighty guys, there we have it. It may have taken 3 days to do the battery in the boot, but as you can tell, she's in the boot, she works. So anyway, that's all sorted. I'm gonna get the hell out of here because it's now 5 o'clock on my last day off and back to work next week. So, well, tomorrow. So I'm gonna get the hell out of here, and thanks for watching guys. Like, subscribe, all that. Video's been doing awesome lately. So I'll catch you guys on the next video.